Well, it's Wednesday, the 30th of May, 2018, and this is your EV News Daily. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. A very warm welcome from London in the UK. Here is today's news about electric cars and the future of transport. It's Martyn Lee here, and I go through every EV article online, so you don't have to. Coming up on the show today, NIO is filing for a $2 billion initial public offering, and a Jaguar I-Pace could more than half, the speed of which the current one does 0 to 60. But first of all, in London in the UK, ride-sharing services, wherever you are around the world, are, whether that's cars or bikes that you're ride-sharing with, are one way of getting a lot of people to try something new. In London, I love they were sometimes called Boris bikes because the mayor used to be called Boris, long story. Now they're sponsored by Santander, the Spanish banks. We call them Santander Cycles. Basically, they're the bike sharing schemes all over London, and it's £2 a day. I use them all the time. You get 30 minutes at a time, so you can dash to the gym on your lunch break, or you can get to work in no time. It's great, and it gets me on a bike every single day. Well, a lot of people will soon be getting their first experience of an electric car thanks to the ride-sharing ZipCar service. In London, ZipCar's launching its fleet of more than 300 Volkswagen eGolf electric cars in London, with 325 due to be on the streets of the capital by the end of the year. Now, ZipCar's Flex service means it's the one where you can drop off your car whenever and wherever you're done using it, which does pose an interesting question about charging it. Well, for consumers, car-sharing services could be a good opportunity to try out an electric car before making the commitment to purchase one. With dealers doing relatively little to sell EVs and automakers spending very little money on advertising, anything that gets the word out could be a big help, says The Drive. Now, wireless charging is one way to fix the charging problem with car-sharing services, and a lot of the streets around London you'll see a bay or two marked off, and it's only for that company's ride-sharing car. They normally get taken out and taken back to the same space, but not with this service. Normally as well, you take a car back to the same space, so in theory, with electric car, and I've never used an EV, by the way, with a car sharing service. I don't know how it works at the moment. Presumably you have to plug the car in to charge before your session is over. Otherwise, how do you stop people getting in the car and it being on empty? But with this service, you can drop the car off whenever you're finished using it, and it does pose that charging question. I'll find out how they get round that, and maybe next time I need a car in London for an hour or two, I'll hunt down one of these eGolfs and see what the service is like. I might just do it, just for the heck of it. Well, from car sharing to car hiring, and the CEO of the German rental company 60 has been wading into the conversation about electric cars, and not in a good way. He says a political effort to push the rollout of EVs is an error. I don't believe, he says, and I quote, "I don't believe in e-cars. Politically, it's a grave mistake," end quote. Now, he said during a conference call yesterday, also adding that critical raw materials like cobalt were under the control of Asian companies. He says this: range is still a catastrophe. You have to invest billions and billions, according to 60. And he said that some rental customers who try out electric cars often end up stranded. Really? Often end up stranded? I'm sure one or two have ended up stranded. Often implies most people who hire an EV from a rental company never get to where they're going because the fuel gauge said empty and they weren't moving anymore. Okay. He says this: if I'm wrong, we'll buy as many EVs as our clients want us to. And he said it in a call to discuss earnings. So you have two options. I guess you can either not hire a car from 60. Where's that number for Hertz again? Or you can give 60 a call and say, I'd love to hire a car. Have you got any electric ones? And maybe that will persuade them in the long term to buy a few. Moving on, and the Chinese company NIO has submitted a confidential filing for an IPO sometime later this year in 2018. Now, the initial public offering could raise up to $2 billion. It'll be used to introduce their range of electric cars, the ES8. is their first one, and it's first for the Chinese market only as well. They say it's already off to a quick start with sales. NIO say that the ES8 is a 7-seater, high-performance electric SUV exclusively for the China market. It's a mobile living space on wheels, they say, with performance in its DNA. And the launch model, I think, coming in at around 68 or 70,000 US dollars as well. Not that you can buy one, only for China. Well, the Jaguar I-Pace is already a pretty fast and well-handling car, getting 0 to 60 done in 4.5 seconds with 394 horsepower on offer. But what if you let Jaguar's Special Vehicle Operations Department loose on it to have a little tweak? Well, the product planning boss, Hanno Kierner, says they could make one a lot quicker. In fact, almost too fast. We're talking 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds. He says this, and I quote, "Yes, we can make it do 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds. It's a good headline, but once you've done it once or twice and lost your eyes in the back of your sockets, you might not want to do it again. I do worry that the instant torque and performance might be too much for untrained drivers." He says, "It may be that we have to impose some kind of restriction so that performance is limited until they have gone on a driving course or something," end quote. It sounds like that's already being worked on, isn't it? And it sounds like the figures from that 90 kilowatt hour battery are so astounding, so quick, that they're having to think, blimey, do we restrict it? Do we let people have the full performance? Because it's obviously off the charts. Well, not only are the number of EVs being sold important to follow, but also what types of electrified vehicles, because working vehicles do far more emission-free miles compared to personal cars. Well, next year we'll see the new Mercedes-Benz e-Sprinter, the electric version of the German automaker's latest cargo van, says Autoblog. We finally have the details on the new e-van. Merck's going to offer 2 battery sizes. First up, a 41 kilowatt hour battery. It's going to do 71.5 miles of range. And a larger 55 kilowatt hour battery that offers 93.2 miles of range. The e-Sprinter is therefore focused on short-range driving for those all-day deliveries for companies like UPS and FedEx, rather than long-haul driving. Now, the smaller 41 kilowatt-hour battery can be fully charged in just 6 hours. The larger battery takes a full 8 hours to charge. Using a DC fast charger, however, both batteries can be topped up to 80% in just 45 minutes. I think the way, that's according to that article from Autoblog, I think the way most of these vehicles are going to be used, they'll be used in urban environments. So 50, 60, 70 miles is utterly fine. Maybe stop off on your driver's lunch break and do a little top-up charge. The charging, let's face it, will always happen overnight, and it'll be pretty slow charging, I imagine, as well, to do some grid balancing, or maybe the price that delivery companies can get for their electric. Maybe they'll be on a cheaper rate overnight, because when those vans aren't being used. And it is a great idea in cities, because all of that stop-start action is where EVs really come into their own. Another fantastic bit of news in terms of numbers of miles driven. Those kind of things where you order your Amazon Prime delivery and you simply must have it tomorrow. Let's get all those done with electric miles. Well, the quality of the BMW i3 doesn't just include the carbon fibre construction or the high-quality recycled interiors, for instance. It's down to cell level too. I'm talking battery cells. The 94 amp-hour cells from Samsung SDI have some of the longest life cycles available on the market. Now, Inside EVs say this: Samsung SDI expects 4,600 charging cycles, 25 degrees C, to end of life, which in the case of batteries is the point when the capacity goes down to 80% or below. They can still be used, obviously, but not desirable in an EV. Of course, there's second life uses all around the place these days, and 80% after 4,600 cycles is still really respectable. Now, since the BMW i3, the 33 kilowatt hour model, is rated at 114 miles, 183 Ks, says Inside EVs, that equates to 524,000 miles. It's one of the best results in the industry, and it's totally doable because the i3 pack has that thermal management system. Read more on the Inside EVs article. Well, for many years, milk has been delivered to doorsteps by electric milk floats. One of my memories of, how some memories get imprinted from your childhood for no reason whatsoever. I distinctly remember summer nights when the windows of the house would be open and you'd be awake at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and you'd hear as the electric milk float would arrive outside the house, and then the clinking of bottles, and the milkman would leave a couple of pints of milk on your doorstep. Sadly, most of those old milk floats were running on a bank of 12-volt car batteries, but they got the job done because they didn't have to do many streets, and then they were back to the depot and being charged up all day long. Well, these days, they're all replaced by diesel vans, and we don't have a milk delivery here in this house, but we did in our last house, and it is noticeable, when you're awake in the middle of the night, you get up for a loo break or something, and you hear that van in the street, and you go, that'll be the milkman, because you hear a noisy diesel rattling outside of your house. However, some news yesterday looks like we might be going back to the future. The UK's Milk and More service. Now, that's the new name of the milkman, by the way. Everything's had a rebrand these days, and even the milkman has had a rebrand to Milk and More. So they'll deliver milk on your doorstep in a couple of glass bottles, but also they'll bring your groceries and your butters and your yogurts and all those kind of things. They do it overnight in the early hours of the morning, so they're ready when you wake up. And they have ordered 200 street scooter electric vans from Deutsche Post's owners. The street scooter is in keeping with the tradition of British milkmen who have used EVs for delivery since 1930, the very first electric milk floats. As Electric Cars Report, we wanted to make this unique tradition relevant again to the requirements of today's customers. That's according to Patrick Muller, the managing director of Milk and More. Sorry, I'm only smiling because presumably they also deliver the Muller yogurts. Anyway, in order to do this, he says, we need a local product portfolio, new IT systems, and a reliable, quiet, and environmentally friendly vehicle. In the street scooter, we found the ideal vehicle for our needs, he says. As a leading innovator, we're helping customers to take innovative paths in their own industry, says Jürgen Geddes, the board member for Deutsche Post DHL Group, and he's responsible for the street scooter. In this way, he says, we achieve sustainable success together, end quote. And even coming down to the debate over the last year, 2 years, really it's taken off about plastic and recycling. And yeah, we drink all of our milk now out of plastic bottles, whereas even until we moved last year, I've been in this house just over a year actually, we always got our milk bottles delivered and we'd stick them in the dishwasher when we were done and put them back on the doorstep, and then when the milkman brought some more milk, he'd take the old ones away. And they're kind of the ultimate recycling, which we've been doing since 1930. Anyway, final story today, and Volkswagen's core brand expects to beat the company's target of 1 million EVs by 2025, a senior manager said, citing solid demand, which is growing in China and in Europe, and untapped potential in the southern hemisphere, according to a Reuters article. Now, Christian Senger is head of electric mobility for the VW brand, and he says this, and I quote, in the cycle plan, where we again and again undertake forward planning up to 15 years, we see that these markets want more electric cars than we had earmarked, end quote. Now, Reuters continue to stoke mass demand. VW is aiming to sell its EVs at a price comparative with conventional combustion engine cars. They're using the MEB platform and falling battery costs, Senger said, designed to underpin 30 battery-driven models from the 4 group brands, from the Golf-sized ID, which is definitely not a Golf, it's the VW ID, not a Golf, the hatchback version of that, to the Vision sedan, which is the biggie. The MEB platform is going to allow the VW Group to gain savings in a production cycle because of those economies of scale. Now, VW Group has a goal of selling 3 million EVs by 2025 in total, including the other brands, so like Audi and Porsche and the Czech division, which is Skoda. Now, waiting lists for the eGolf, which is a lovely car on sale at the moment, have grown to more than 12 months. In fact, in some markets, they've even stopped taking orders for the eGolf. after state backing, government backing, industry backing, incentives meant the model's price can drop by about a third to 25,000 euros. That's 29,000 US dollars, according to VW. Well, that's where we'll end today. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. I love doing this, and I love to spread the word about electric cars. If you can help me do that, please do share this podcast anywhere with anyone who you think would like to know more about EVs. And of course, if you're new to the podcast and you'd like to discover some old ones, hopefully in the podcast descriptions, everything is there that you need to find what you might be interested in, and they're all online for free, and they always will be, by the way. The archive at least will always be free on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, the blog, and that's at evnewsdaily.com, and iHeartRadio podcasts too. If you subscribe, well, then you get them first and free and automatically. If you could leave a review, you know how much it helps with all these kind of things. And if you want to say hi on the socials, Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, just search in your search box for EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.